The old man sat motionless in his wheelchair, surrounded by guards who looked more like soldiers than bodyguards. His mansion echoed with silence, not because there was no one around, but because everyone was terrified to speak. Even the nurses avoided looking into his tired eyes. They all feared one thing, the powerful mafia boss who ruled half the city and happened to be the old man's only son. But on one unforgettable evening, a young caregiver walked toward the broken old man, gently held his trembling hand, and whispered one simple Italian word. Within seconds, the old man's tears began to fall, and what happened afterward changed the lives of everyone in that mansion forever. Before we continue, if you believe kindness is stronger than fear and that everyone deserves a second chance, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone you care about, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us bring more emotional stories that remind the world humanity still exists. Everyone in the city knew the name Lorenzo Moretti. For decades, his name inspired fear. Newspapers never proved anything, but whispers filled every street. Businessmen lowered their voices whenever they mentioned him. Politicians pretended they had never met him. His son, Marco Moretti, had become even more feared than his father, building an empire protected by loyalty, money, and silence. Yet inside the enormous mansion where luxury covered every wall, Lorenzo was no longer the powerful man the world remembered. Age had stolen his strength. A stroke had left him unable to walk. The man who once commanded respect with a single glance now spent his days staring through the window, forgotten even by those closest to him. The staff changed constantly because no one could handle the pressure. Every caregiver arrived with perfect qualifications but left within weeks. They weren't fired. They simply couldn't survive the fear. Every mistake felt like it might cost them everything. Nobody dared smile. Nobody dared ask Lorenzo what he needed. They completed their duties in silence and rushed out of the room as quickly as possible. The mansion felt less like a home and more like a prison built from wealth. Then came Sofia, a young caregiver from a humble family. She had worked in hospitals where lonely patients taught her that medicine healed the body, but compassion healed the soul. She knew exactly who the Moretti family was before accepting the job, but she also believed that suffering looked the same whether someone was rich or poor. Her friends begged her not to go. They warned her that people connected to the Morettis disappeared without explanation. Sofia simply smiled and said every elderly person deserved dignity before the end of life. During her first week, she noticed something nobody else seemed willing to acknowledge. Lorenzo wasn't angry. He wasn't dangerous. He was simply lonely. Every morning she greeted him warmly, even when he couldn't respond. She adjusted his blanket with care instead of rushing through the routine. She read books aloud, played soft music, and opened the curtains so sunlight could warm the room. Slowly, the emptiness in Lorenzo's eyes began to fade, replaced by tiny moments of recognition that no doctor had expected. One rainy afternoon, Sofia discovered an old wooden music box tucked away inside a dusty cabinet. When she carefully opened it, a gentle Italian melody filled the room. Lorenzo suddenly began shaking. Tears gathered in his eyes as he stared at the music box with heartbreaking sadness. Sofia realized this wasn't fear. This was memory. Hidden beneath years of silence was a man remembering a life that existed long before power and violence consumed his family. She knelt beside him, gently placed her hand over his weathered fingers, and leaned close enough that only he could hear her. Then she softly whispered one Italian word. Famiglia. Family. The reaction was immediate. Lorenzo closed his eyes as tears rolled freely down his cheeks. His lips trembled before he struggled to whisper the same word back. It was the first clear word anyone had heard him speak since his stroke months earlier. Nurses stood frozen in disbelief. Security guards lowered their eyes, unable to explain what they had just witnessed. The silence that had haunted the mansion was finally broken, not by fear, but by love. At that exact moment, Marco entered the room. The feared mafia boss had expected another medical report. Instead, he saw his father crying while holding the hand of a caregiver who wasn't afraid of him. For several long seconds, nobody moved. Marco looked at the woman who had accomplished what expensive specialists and famous doctors never could. Then he looked at his father, whose face carried peace instead of pain for the first time in years. That evening became the turning point of Marco's life. He began visiting his father every day instead of once every few months. He listened to old family stories Sofia encouraged Lorenzo to remember. He discovered photographs of his mother smiling before tragedy hardened their lives. For the first time, Marco understood that power had given him everything except the one thing his father truly wanted, a family that still cared enough to sit beside him. Months passed, and the mansion slowly transformed. Laughter replaced silence. The staff no longer walked with fear but with confidence. Lorenzo never fully recovered physically, yet his spirit became stronger each day because someone finally reminded him that he was more than a legend people feared. He was simply a father who longed to be loved before his final chapter ended. If this story has touched your heart so far, please write the word Famiglia in the comments below. Let's fill this comment section with a reminder that family, kindness, and compassion still matter in today's world. When Lorenzo peacefully passed away several months later, Marco surprised the entire city. Instead of hosting a display of power, he organized a quiet funeral attended by ordinary people his father had secretly helped throughout his life. Many came with tears, sharing stories of generosity that had never reached the newspapers. Sofia stood quietly in the back, knowing she had never changed a mafia empire overnight. She had simply reminded one lonely old man, and his broken son, that love speaks louder than fear. If this story moved you, please like this video, share it with someone who believes in second chances, leave your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more emotional stories that restore faith in humanity. Sometimes, one kind word is all it takes to change a life forever.
Así que pusimos musiquita de fondo. Qué rico el café, boludo, estas noches. Esta noche de frío necesito una mentirosa que duerma conmigo y un cafecito, siempre, dame el café. La mentirosa, si quiere llegar un poco más tarde, la podemos esperar, pero el café no. Así que nada.